Spoiler alert, pause now if you haven't seen the movie. Actually, no, fuck it.
We want to alienate whoever we can.
There's nobody who's saying Black Lives Matter more.
They don't understand systemic or structural racism. Alright, well hello, welcome to the inaugural pilot episode of Owls at Dawn. We are just two dudes who studied philosophy, politics, and religion around the world, and decided to start a podcast where we could bullshit with impunity. I'm Austin Hayden Smith.
And I am Troy Polidori.
Okay, so the way that we're going to start off every podcast is with what we're calling the Shitty Minute. The Shitty Minute is a minute where one of us gets the opportunity to rant or to praise, but most likely rant, something that is chapping our hide. And this week, Troy drew the lot, and I think he's going to rant about Batman vs. Superman. Is that right?
Not specifically, but that was certainly what spurred on the chapped hide, although that imagery is a bit...
Antiquated?
I don't know, it's definitely barring me from thinking about what I'm going to say next, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The imagery's a little too strong, a little too on the nose.
All right, brother. Well, a minute is on the clock.
All right, my shitty minute really grinds my gears is superheroes. Can't fucking stand them. I watched Batman vs. Superman last week, and it was quite possibly the worst movie I've ever seen. I was actively hoping for it to end as soon as possible. I was willing for, spoiler alert, pause now if you haven't seen the movie. Actually, no, fuck it. Doomsday needed to kill everybody, because then the movie would be over and I wouldn't have to watch anymore. I'm not going to go into the details of why the movie sucked. If you saw it, you don't need my explanation. It's pretty obvious. What I am upset about is the superhero genre in general, specifically the movies. I have not read many of the comics as many have. I'm not going to judge that. It's not an area of specialization for me. But superheroes in movies really suck. Basically, all they do is they're police if there weren't any laws. And they have, they're white for the most part and have basic personality dysfunction that makes us empathize with them. Beyond that, they never actually do anything to help anybody. Take Batman, for example. Batman has billions of dollars, all this tech, and instead of, solving poverty in Gotham or enhancing access to education, he's gonna beat up petty criminals, of which somehow there are literally billions of petty criminals always waiting to be taken up by Batman. It just makes no sense. Why can't you use all of your means to actually solve the problems like crime, rather than just cracking down as a steroid-ridden police force? It's ridiculous. I hate it. We need superheroes of the left. Of course, that's a horrible meme, right? Of the left. Superheroes of the left who put away their steroids, who put away their billion-dollar tech, and instead actually fight to change the world in the Marxist theses on Feuerbach sort of way. Once we have that, I'll start going to Marvel movies again and not rant about them on my shitty podcast.
So I got a quick question for you. What would a superhero on the left look like?
I was not prepared for that.
She'd have to, is Catwoman close?
Maybe. I mean, yeah, you think about in, what was it, the third Nolan Batman movie?
Yeah.
Where she was in?
Yeah.
She definitely identified with the lumpen proletariat, right? The rabble. But I'm not sure what she actually does other than, save some kid who's getting his apple stolen by a couple of thugs. Yeah, there's not much there. Yeah.
It's like the Aladdin superhero? Is that what that is?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly potential there, right? The fact that you can have a character like that identifies with the, the working class and the lower classes shows you that there's potential to have that there, but it's just never exercised because we end up not, it's like people are afraid to actually tackle the issues that cause things like crime and whatnot.
Right.
They don't want to see that in their movies. They want to see white guys beat up on petty criminals.
Yeah. I have not seen the movie yet, and I'll be completely honest, I really have no desire. I mean, I dug the Nolan Batman films. Those were sick, but the superhero genre never really did it to me. I was much more into and this is probably even worse, but I was much more into like James Bond spy type of stuff. So I'm much more of like a Bourne. If I'm gonna watch an action film, I'd much rather watch Matt Damon, Jason Bourne, kick some ass.
At least Bond's like a true sociopath. Like, he's not hiding it.
Right?
Behind some veneer of like, oh, I'm gonna build a better world.
Well, he's not a Christ figure too, right? That's the big thing with Superman, is he's supposed to be like a fucking Christ figure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit too much. Of course, he's fully identified with American imperialism throughout history.
Yeah. All right, well, that wraps up the shitty 3 minutes. So now let's transition into the main segment. So today we decided for the first podcast to tackle like an extremely inflammatory topic.
We don't want anybody listening to this podcast, basically.
We want to alienate whoever we can. So we want to talk about Black Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter stuff, issues, problems, controversy. It's not controversy. It shouldn't be a controversy, but we want to kind of address it. And so, Troy, did you have anything in particular that you wanted to say to start things off?
So I guess the first thing that we should probably address is the genealogy of these terms. Where do they come from? What's their social root? Things like that. If we're going to be good Nietzscheans, we definitely want to discuss where these ideas come from originally, right? It strikes me that the term matters is being used, it's sort of being equivocated upon in these different movements, right? I mean, Black Lives Matter, there's nobody who's saying Black Lives Matter more than other lives. Like, let's take these because they are the most mattering of any lives. But it seems like the All Lives Matter interpret it that way.
Right.
It's to assert that you matter is to necessarily assert that you matter more than others, respective to all other lives. But it strikes me as so ridiculous to think that the reason why the BLM movement starts is because black people feel like, and the data of course shows they're justified in feeling like, they are being targeted by police, amongst 1,000 other social ills that they suffer. And to take that and the All Lives Matter movement to respond to it by saying, well, that means you're special because you don't want to be exceptional in the negative sense, right? Being accepted socially means you're calling yourself superior. Like, there's no middle ground. You're either inferior or you're superior. When, of course, the All Lives Matter movement, by definition, literally means there are no inferiors or superiors. It's supposed to mean, right? Literally. There just seems to be this contradiction at the heart of it, where the term matters is being equivocated. And that whenever I'm talking to somebody who represents that viewpoint, it's so difficult to get across that this is what's going on.
Yeah, it's strange too, because I mean, it depends on the voice. I think it was actually, I was listening to sort of like a roundtable discussion on BET, and I think it was like Talib Kweli or someone that they had call in, who said something along the lines of, he's like, when you go into an AIDS fundraiser, you don't start screaming, no, cancer is more important. We gotta be raising money for cancer. He's like, you recognize that this is a unique event, raising money for AIDS. And yeah, there are other problems that we need to address as well, but that doesn't somehow negate the importance of the mission of this particular group or movement or cause. And I thought that was actually like a really profound point. It's like, yeah, you can say Black Lives Matter, and it doesn't have any sort of exclusionary disposition to a greater claim to equality or something like that. So I guess what I really wonder is what is it about the Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter movement or viewpoint that is so reactionary to this? Like, no, Black lives can't matter, because then that's creating some sort of exceptionalism for the black community. What do you think it is? Get your psychoanalytic hat on.
Yeah, the roots of it have been there for a long time, right? Black History Month in February. You always have somebody on Twitter or somewhere else who's saying, well, why can't there be a White History Month?
Right.
Like, to assert that you make anything exceptional, even for a short period of time, automatically means it's asserting superiority, which is clearly ridiculous. Of course it's not doing that.
Right.
I mean, if you're putting your psychoanalytic hat on, it seems pretty obvious. I mean, maybe that's just from a couple of lefties that makes it obvious, but to assert equality itself is radical and violent to the privileged.
Right.
And that seems to be exactly what's going on. We white people want to have our special circumstances. We want to have our special relationships with cops and with, getting jobs and with the state and et cetera, et cetera. And to assert that other people need to be included into that circle is violent because it's our circle.
Yeah. Now, so as soon as you say that, though, I'm just playing devil's advocate, right? I think the person on the All Lives Matter side would reject that power dynamic altogether, though. They would reject the privilege. They hate the term white privilege. Like they literally scoff and roll their eyes at the term white privilege or white supremacy, as though that does not exist.
That's absolutely right. I mean, you look at a lot of the polling behind the Trump phenomenon, and you see that white people don't think they have privilege. They honestly believe that racism against whites is stronger than racism against blacks in America today. They honestly believe that. And I don't even know how to address that, other than the fact that it's possible that when you start to lose some of your privilege, that's indistinguishable from racism or bigotry against you. It feels like it, at least. It's sort of like, when you have an intense positive, even just bringing that back a little bit towards the middle feels like a negative. Just as far as an affectation, I could see where that might end up being the case. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm just trying to kind of think through it. I think what you're getting at, and this is something that increasingly I've been more interested in lately, is you're getting at the sort of like deeper ideological forces and structures that are really at play. That sort of like latent truths that are really at play, and that's what's super interesting. Because so I was chatting with my friend. He's a former Los Angeles Police Department patrolman, and we were chatting about this, and I mentioned to him, I used the metaphor of like the abuser and the abused, and I said the Black Lives Matter movement kind of maps on well to this, right? You have an abuser and you have an abused. The abused is the sort of white power structure that has existed, and the abused are the black community, at least in this instance, right? And I said, but in any abuser-abused relationship, there's this power dynamic where one has the power, one has the potency, one has a voice, one has capacity, and the other literally has no vitality and has no life. And I was like, and that's what the complaint is from the BLM movement, right? Is that they don't have a voice. And that's what mattering means, is that when somebody dies, there's no justice, there's no prosecution. Like the Freddie Gray, the police officer with that, they just decided again not to bring charges. How fucking predictable is that, right? You could have scripted that. Obviously that was going to happen. Or that wasn't going to happen. But so you have this incapacity, this inability to function, to have any sort of vitality on one side, and then one other side has all the capacity and all the privilege. If you're a white swimmer from Stanford, you can sexually abuse a woman in a fucking alley behind a dumpster, and you get a little slap on the wrist, and maybe you get a little mud smushed all over your face, but generally speaking, you're not going to go to jail or anything like that. Whereas if that was like a black kid or a brown kid, you bet believe that kid's going to jail, right?
There'd be strong community pressure on a judge for a harsh sentence, of course.
Absolutely. So this clearly seems to map on quite well to an abuser-abused relationship. But then what happens is the abuser then, since she generally, right, in a typical abuser-abused relationship, since she has no voice, she has no capacity, she starts to kick and scream, and the first thing that somebody has to do is listen. Just shut up and listen and hear what she's actually trying to say. And then you go from there, and you kind of build from building that point of empathy from that, right? So I was talking about my buddy, and then he basically said, I think that relationship metaphor actually works really well. He's like, this is how I view it, and this is so telling, and I think this was actually really crucial for me in kind of understanding the All Lives Matter movement or pushback. And he said, he was like, if you're in a relationship and you've committed some past issues, and then you keep getting like nagged by this other individual who keeps bringing up these past issues to you and won't let you ever progress and move on, he's like, doesn't that prevent progress and growth? And I think that's how the All Lives Matter movement actually views this. They view it as like this woman who has been abused, or maybe there was some problems, maybe abuse is too hard of a word in their mind. There were some issues, but you've repented, you've tried to move on, you're trying to better yourself, but that bitch just won't let that shit go. and she keeps like harping on you and like just rubbing your face in it. Remember that one time you sent that naked picture to that girl, or and I think that's how they view the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. But a little counterpoint is you're seeing a doubling down amongst not necessarily just the All Lives Matter movement, but the far right movement as a whole in the country, that those past wrongs weren't even all that bad. Was slavery really that bad? Is kind of the new meme, right? Bill O'Reilly's on Fox News talking about how the slaves that built the White House, hearkening to Michelle Obama's speech at the DNC, were well-fed and taken care of, and basically implying they couldn't have had a better life than this. This was the best possible life for them.
What?
Now, not explicitly saying that, but that's the implication of the slavery wasn't as bad thing, right? Imagine if they were still in Africa, kind of thinking, and that's, again, they're not saying that explicitly because you can't say that. It's taboo, but that's certainly the implication you get from it, was the same kind of thinking that people had during the time to justify slavery. The Negroes are lesser than white people. They're less intelligent, less sophisticated, less able, and therefore this is the best possible life that they can have. Now, no, in the early 19th century, you can say that. You can't say that now, but is this really distinguishable from that, rhetoric-wise?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's not. It's funny because I always try to be diplomatic and I try to be kind in my engagements with people when I'm online or anything like that.
That's your first problem.
Yeah, I know. It's that damn Christian heritage, I still got that. Still got that Francis of Assisi mantra, at all times witness, and if necessary, use words.
You need to have Francis of Assisi on one shoulder and Martin Luther on the other.
Yeah, that's right. But I feel like sometimes when you really boil it down like that, that's disgusting. When you boil it down and you start to really assess what is going on, the All Lives Matter movement really is a sort of disgusting holdover of some of the greatest, grossest ills that kind of characterize the Western world.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is, think about 8 years ago, 2008, we elect the first black president. Everyone's it's just an incredible time. I mean, even I was a cynic. You were a cynic. Part of you was, even though you're still kind of a believer. Even the cynics were like, you know what? This is pretty cool. Like, we got a black president. He's legitimately intelligent and cool. And I hang out with him, which is the first politician you can ever say that about. Things have changed in the country. You can at least say that. And we thought that this would be a new time for race relations in America. We couldn't elect a black president without having major progress on race. And yet, you look back now, 8 years later, how can you not say we've gone backwards?
Do you think so?
I mean, it has to be, right? Every single demographic agrees that race relations are worse now than they were in, the 90s and the early 2000s. I think every demographic says that, polling-wise. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's crazy. And just to clarify, I've always been a cynic, but now I'm even more of a cynic. But for some reason now I have like a sort of like soft spot, and I'm kind of like, damn, how crazy is it that we actually had a black president in America? And I think it's because of the heightened race relations that I'm almost even more, I don't know, sentimental. Is that I don't know if it's sentimentality that I'm feeling, but I literally got teary-eyed a couple of weeks ago. I was like, holy shit, think about it. We have a black president in the United States, but yet a black man can't get justice when he's thrown in the back of a police car and his spine breaks, and he's mistreated, or a black man is held down on the ground and he's shot, 4 times in the chest? Or that there's a dude in a car who tells a police officer that I am carrying and is complying and gets shot multiple times with a child in the back seat and his girlfriend in the front. So
what a weird time.
Right.
Can you imagine in 100 years reading history books and trying to explain to kids in classrooms that, yeah, we elected our first black president and then everything went to shit between the races in America? That will make no sense to them.
No.
There'll be some convoluted history book reasoning, rationalization to go on there. I'm guessing because we can't even explain it now.
Yeah, they're going to look back on it like we look back on the Crusades or the Inquisition or something like that. Like, that's not Christianity. They're going to be like,
what the hell?
Yeah, they're gonna be like, that's not Americanism. That's not democracy.
Yeah, that'll be a weird bevy of contradictions, social contradictions that will be difficult to rationalize, put all together.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the Blue Lives Matter
Okay.
movement, because I think that's pretty interesting in the way there's no real distinction between All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, right? It seems to me that they're coming from the same sources. Now, that's really interesting, right? Because All Lives Matter is specifically saying you're not allowed to specify which lives matter, and yet in the next breath saying, yeah, but also Blue Lives Matter.
Right.
Which of course is a bit of a tension, but neither here nor there.
Well, they're trying to use the same antagonistic logic that the Black Lives Matter movement is espousing. But here's the problem: conservatives can't use that sort of deconstructive logic. It violates their very framework. So you can't do that. You either have to be consistent or you have to be a sort of like post-structuralist, multilateral thinker. And that's why it's so funny, because it's such a fucking contradiction.
Yeah, exactly. You could come up with a sophisticated, almost satirical way of trying to bring down the efficacy of a movement by mimicking it, right? You could do like a Kafka-esque absurdity level developing of a movement, but that's clearly not what they're doing. Like, they legitimately feel like all lives matter, don't specify, in the next breath start specification of which lives matter.
Yeah, and why does it have to be the fucking centralization of power that they're valorizing? Like, that's what I don't understand. Why do the All Lives Matter movement, which I'm going to broad brush here, and I'm going to largely encamp within the conservative mentality or a conservative logic, because it absolutely is a conservative logic that's governing that position. Why do they have to aim towards power structures and then, like, praise these dominating power structures? Aren't these the very same people that talk about freedom in America and freedom, but yet it's like, no, the police force, the people who are overbearing and abuse their own power and who govern our communities, and I don't know, it just seems like this strange contradiction that they don't see, and I don't understand how they can be so goddamn inconsistent.
Yeah, it's such an emphasis on literally, you say conservative, it's literally conservative in that it's conserving social relations that have existed for centuries.
I like the word preservative.
Yeah, definitely. That works here. There are social relations that make people comfortable, and when those are challenged, that they are unequal, that scares people because they want their social traditions that benefit them to remain.
It's just so strange, isn't it? I mean, people who claim to want freedom so much, I don't actually think they want freedom. I think that the conservative logic from a conservative position, there's like this gut reaction to automatically defend government and country and military and police and these strong institutions. But yet, when information comes out, like in the UK, the Chilcot inquiry comes out, and people are like, oh yeah, Tony Blair should be tried as a war criminal. Immediately, the right is like, no, that's ridiculous. How could you charge him for war crimes? It's like, why are you so quick to defend these overlords, your master? Like, what the fuck, man? I thought that you were all about, like what is this tendency?
Yeah, and the really ironic thing about it, and ironic in the Alanis Morissette version of ironic, is that in defending these positions of power, they actually harm the people who are in those positions of power. In the military, it's support the troops, but that also means that you support everything that the military does, period, even when it hurts the troops. So when the troops come back with PTSD, or they come back feeling like they wasted years of their lives on a pointless mission, then you're supporting the feeling of despair and despondency and all those negative things that are effects. And the troops oftentimes don't want you to support those things in the aftermath. In the same way with the Blue Lives Matter. It's, cops, painting all cops with a broad brush is obviously stupid. That's not helpful at all. But you can see the specific sort of social antagonisms that are represented in the police force as having a root in the way it's structured. There are structural relations that cause these effects. Cops are not even like top 5 or 7 most dangerous jobs in America. It's above average in terms of dangerous, but that's, I think, mostly because of car accidents. Car accidents are the leading cause of death for police officers. It's definitely not, homicide or people resisting arrest. Not even close. I think fishermen and loggers and many, many other jobs are way more dangerous physically to your body than being a cop. Not to say that being a cop is easy. Of course it's not. I'm a fucking teacher. I'm not afraid for my life ever. Yeah. Except for that one kid who read Ayn Rand before he came to class and then wants to argue about it. Then I'm scared for my life. Luckily, we don't have open carry here in California. I read another article the other day that was talking about how I'm not sure about the exact details. I don't want to sort of quote out of hand without having any backup, but police officers have some of the highest domestic abuse rates of any job in America.
Yeah.
And that's not because being a cop makes you a wife beater. Of course not. It has to do with the kind of people that are attracted to becoming cops, how little they're paid relative to the other prospects that people like that have, and the job they're expected to do. Steroid use amongst police officers is extremely high. There's a strong machismo culture in police forces, especially in urban areas where you feel weak if you don't have that, or not part of that culture. And that's not because they're necessarily bad people. Some of them probably are. Most of them probably aren't. But it's a structural thing. If you expect cops to constantly have to bear down on broken windows style policing and have an antagonistic relationship with the community and to reduce crime at literally any cost, even if that means scaring people or juking stats or whatever, to quote The Wire. I'm a good social liberal white person now. Then you should expect to have these sort of results. And it's yet again, the result of people being unable to think structurally about, social effects. It has to be an individual that's doing this. Magically, a whole group of individuals all get together and decide to do this one thing as a majority, rather than, well, if the majority of people in a group are doing it, it's probably because there's some underlying reason causing that to happen.
Right, and I think that is ultimately the sort of the linchpin that the All Lives Matter antagonism neglects. That's it, is they don't understand systemic or structural racism. And that's what's so interesting, is they don't understand it, and they're not even willing to really consider it, because they have to begin from speaking of Ayn Rand, they have to begin from that autonomous position of individuality. But that's something that drastically misunderstands the way that social relations actually function. It's bad ontologically, it's bad metaphysically, it's bad politically, it's bad socially. This is bad.
Would it be overdetermination to say that's the entire reason why American social democracy has lagged behind European social democracy in so many areas?
No, not at all. It's our embedded liberalism, and I mean liberal in the classical sense, beginning from sort of individual freedoms. That's I think you hit it on the head. I had this conversation the other day, actually, with a law student, and we were talking about that, and about the difference, why I'm not a liberal. And I said, the main reason is the foundation. I don't start from the notion of individuality. I start from the notion of difference, in a good sort of pseudo-Deleuzian sense. But yeah, I start from the notion of difference, from multiplicity. And then you individuate from there. And so you're only individual insofar as you are made individual through the process of individuation. And it's how you individuate. How do we become these various parts within the larger whole that is more important? And so that's the thing that the All Lives Matter movement doesn't really pay much attention to, is how is it that the black community has come to be individuated in the way that it has? How is it that the individuals then within that community, the sort of smaller parts within the parts, how have they been individuated within that community? And then how do the external pressures condition the circumstances in which they find themselves, into which they are thrown at every given moment without their own choosing, right? You're born into your relation, you're born into your skin color, just at every given moment you're born into the social, religious, political structures that condition you. What are the conditions that have led to that conditioning? And then on top of that, how do you then respond to it? How do you appropriate those conditions? To what extent do you appropriate it? And this is, Sartre talks about this in Critique of Dialectical Reason. He calls it the self-domestication of man. And it's the idea that you take on those conditions of racism or class structure, and you appropriate them and you embody them in a sort of, he calls it through comprehension, but it's this unconscious activity of appropriation of your social structure or your social conditioning or your class structure. And then you live that. And so there's a dialectical relation between the external conditioning and the internal process of appropriation, and they sort of swirl together in a complex transformation of what he calls praxis, activity, action.
And so from Sartre's point of view, seriality is the condition that we're in that's basically not been unearthed, right? I mean, All Lives Matter is stuck in this serial position and is unwilling or unable to recognize it as such.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, without getting too technical here, the term seriality is the perfect term to describe the All Lives Matter movement, and I think the conservative or liberal positions altogether. And just for anyone who doesn't understand seriality, it's a sort of technical term that Sartre uses to describe social relations that are mediated in a world, in a capitalist world, that lead to external antagonistic relations, where he uses the example of the bus queue, right? You're at a bus queue and everybody is united by this external object, what he calls the collective object, the bus. And at the bus queue, everybody has value only insofar as they are united in their relation to that external object, which means that there is no intrinsic value or there's no uniqueness outside of that relation, that material relation, which means that people are replaceable. They don't really have any intrinsic value. You can be replaced for me, I can be replaced for her, she can be replaced for him, etc. And so there's no intrinsic value whatsoever. And then not only that, but there's also antagonistic competition, because you might get my fucking seat, and I gotta get to work. So I don't want you to have my seat. So there's antagonism. There's a relationship of inessentiality, and it's more complex than that ultimately. But really, I think that comes to sort of define the relations within much of the socio-political landscape.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the way you cash that out is when you see the rotting corpse of Rudy Giuliani on television talking about how the real problem is black-on-black violence, and that the majority of black homicides are perpetrated by other black individuals. With that position of the serial logic in mind, you would say, well, no shit. I mean, if white people were replaced or switched with black people in the social world, it would be the exact same, and that, again, wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Of course you'd expect that to be the case. If white people were as impoverished as black people on average and stuck in urban centers that had been evacuated of all businesses and parks and grocery stores and everything else, then they would be in the exact same position. And that part of it, that sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like speculative thinking, or that ability to think about counterfactuals, is just beyond the scope, I guess. Yeah. It's like they're brute facts, and those brute facts are all that matters, without talking about the structural conditions that led to those brute facts, or the counterfactual positions of what if those conditions had been different, what kind of brute facts would have been different. There's just all that kind of thinking is out the door.
Right.
All that college level thinking, right?
Yeah. All that basic undergraduate level thinking.
College boy thinking.
Yeah. It is. It's really interesting, and it's just smokescreen. It's just smokescreen, because when you challenge somebody's ideological framework, it threatens like their very being. It threatens everything that they align themselves with, and they see it as almost a personal attack. And so there's this gut reaction that no, that can't be. And then it's like, I'm going to hold on to any sort of statistic that I can. Black on black crime is worse. It's like, okay, but that's not answering the issue. That's just a fucking deflection, man. Let's talk about it. Why is there such crime in the black communities? Well, it's because of years of institutionalized segregation and racism and socioeconomic policies that have literally sought to hold down certain individuals and certain communities. And so the whole point is we have to figure out how to ease those issues before we can figure anything else out. And before we can even do that, I think we just have to shut up and listen. That's why I'm such a big advocate, even though I cannot stand the probably future President Clinton, Mrs. Clinton. One of the things she said that was so brilliant, she was like, let's just listen to these people that are voicing these complaints. It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter who they are. If there's somebody that is crying out the cry of the oppressed, so to speak, right? The first thing we got to do is have some sort of empathic connection where we listen.
That's the thing, right? Is we can be on a podcast, a couple of, we're white guys who are college educated and we're academics by profession.
Hey, I'm pretty tan right now, dude. I've been back in Southern California. I'm getting tan. So. Well,
yeah, it's heritage, not hate, all right?
Oh, okay.
This is coming from a pasty white person. We can talk about this. We can be the white saviors who figure out all these social policies that will alleviate black poverty and et cetera, but none of that will ever change the actual dynamisms in culture, the race relations, to put a name on it, unless we actually start to treat everybody as a human being, empathically, as if they were our children or our brothers or our good friends. And when we don't do that, we don't have this empathic connection between people who's willing to listen and let them tell us what's happening, since we don't know, then we'll never be able to actually make any progress beyond writing academic papers on what will solve our issues.
But you're not talking about like a colorblind mentality, right?
Oh no, of course not. I mean, it's very color specific, because it's saying these are the people who are oppressed, and by being oppressed, it literally means to take away their voice. Their voice
Right.
isn't as efficacious as the voices of those who are the oppressors or the powerful, and to proactively stamp out that difference and to give voice to the oppressed, and not just nominally, like you're going to have your 5 minutes at the podium to talk about how you've been hurt, but to actually be the sort of political force, right? To be the political force that actually makes change happen.
So, see, because this is another one of the issues that I think you're going to get, like, in pushback from the All Lives Matter crew, right? Is that they are cool with advocating a color blindness. They're cool with that. They like that idea because that goes to the idea of equality before. It's like, well, let's just maintain the status quo and let's just stop looking at color and everybody's equal. And once we start looking through a lens of color blindness, then you won't have any social ills. You won't have any racial inequality, and et cetera, et cetera. So how do you have a sort of universalistic humanist perspective while at the same time embracing and celebrating difference without going to like the colorblind liberal maneuver or trope, I guess it would be?
Is there really any difference between the ideal colorblind society and the same sort of purposefully ignoring structural conditions phenomenon we were talking about earlier? That's what it is, right? Colorblind literally means there are no structural conditions that cause anything. Everybody is born with equal equality of opportunity, and whatever brute facts come out of that are their own fault. That's the classic open market of society liberalism we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not about color at all. It's all about an ideology about how every individual is responsible for all that happens to them, where they were born, to whom, etc., etc. It's not really about race at all, it seems like, or about color at all, I should say. It's definitely about race.
Yeah, and actually, this would actually be a perfect time to kind of transition into the next segment, because this sort of ties into one of my recommendations.
All right, so our next segment is the Sticky Leaves. If you've ever read The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, then you know the perils of digging through hours and hours of argument and discussion about socio-political, theological, philosophical, etc. topics of a 19th century Russian misanthrope, Fyodor Dostoevsky. And in the text, Ivan Karamazov, one of the brothers, eponymous brothers, speaks to his atheism and his radical political stance, wherein his brother Alyosha asks him, well, then why do you live? If you're going to be an atheist and you don't believe in anything greater, what's the point of living? What do you love in life if not God? And Ivan says it's the sticky little leaves on a Sunday morning, meaning there are little things in nature that, while absurd, he loves them anyway, and that's why he gets out of bed in the morning. Hopelessly romantic, and it burns my cynical soul to think about it. But as they say, the cynic is always the biggest believer, right?
Yeah.
So, Austin, what are your sticky leaves this week?
So I kind of have two, but they sort of relate into what we've been talking about. So, Troy, you know this. I've been talking with you about this, how my interests have turned more in the past year or two towards economic theory and political theory. And so this week, I want to recommend two books. One by a guy named Mark Blyth, who is a Scottish economist, actually from Dundee, Scotland in the house. I feel like that might be the only time that's ever been said.
No one knows where that is.
It is on the east coast of Scotland. It is a big village, I think they call it sometimes. Great place. It's where I did my PhD. But anyway, I think Mark Blyth might be like the second greatest import of recent years from Dundee, besides Brian Cox, the actor, who also is from Dundee. So Mark Blyth wrote a book in I think it was 2010. It's called Austerity, and it is a really good. I think it's actually a popular book. It's not too difficult to access. It's not too academic, and it's a really nice overview of the dangers of austerity principles, or of what we in America call fiscal conservatism, or deregulation, or free market ideology. And he does a sort of really nice historical analysis of the failure of austerity principles throughout Europe and in the United States, and ultimately argues that this is a dangerous idea, one that needs to be rejected wholeheartedly. And the other book that I want to recommend, and actually I listened to that on Audible, which for me is the perfect platform to listen to books that aren't too rigorous. So I always listen to popular nonfiction books on Audible. And then the other book is more of a technical book, but it kind of relates to it, and it's called The Emotional Logic of Capitalism. And I'm going to butcher this guy's name, I think, but I think it's just Martin Konings. He's actually been a contributor on Jacobin magazine, their website or blog, or I don't know if he's actually in the printed issues at all. But Martin Konings, it's called The Emotional Logic of Capitalism: What Progressives Have Missed. And in particular, in the introduction, the reason that I was reminded of this just a minute ago at the end of the last segment was he talks about the sort of Weberian notion of the disenchantment of the world, but then he talks about Benjamin and the idea of how the Protestant Reformation was just re-enchanted in the material relation of money. And there's something really interesting about this idea, how there has been a sort of revalorization or a re-enchantment, a sort of religious piety towards the market logic, which then infiltrates the rest of social relations that sort of determine how it is that we view social relations. And I think, honestly, the Black Lives Matter movement and All Lives Matter, or the Black Lives Matter controversy from the perspective of the All Lives Matter movement, sort of fits into this type of indictment, that it's buying into this emotional logic of capitalism, and that's actually kind of what's ultimately determining the social relations. So the book is much more expansive than that, but at the very least, that kind of gives you a little bit of a teaser into what can be expected in certain parts of the book. And the rest of the book is just really good. It is a really nice analysis of the underlying conditions that sort of determine the logic of Western capitalist democratic social relations. So check those two out.
Sounds interesting. And if you're listening, Audible, definitely soliciting a sponsorship opportunity. Although at this point we are not sponsored.
That's right.
Putting that out there.
That's right. We'll take it. I'll take even a free membership. That'd be right on. All right. So now on to the next segment. So because Troy and I are trained in philosophy, we can bullshit pretty much about anything under the sun without any sort of awareness of the actual topic. And so we decided that what we're going to do every single week is we're going to take a top trending topic in the world of Google and social media and I guess just the broader social arena, and we are going to talk about it for a couple of minutes. So this week, the most trending, important, world-changing, transformative thing is Pokemon Go.
And to be clear, we're taking this issue from the perspective of, as Zizek has said, it is better to analyze a film without having seen it. That's the most Hegelian thing you can do, right? Is to not know about a thing and still be able to engage it in the dialectical process. And that's what we're doing, because I literally have no idea what Pokemon Go is, other than my students wander around the classroom before class, finding them in the classroom.
This is college, folks. This is college. This isn't high school. This is college.
Yes, there are students wandering around 11 o'clock at night when my night class is over, searching for them. Which, in one sense, is kind of cool. Just the sort of, community affect of it is interesting and kind of fun. There's nothing, negative about that. It's not sort of douchebag material, definitely. Nice kids, people are friendly. But if we're going to theorize about this, where do we go?
Augmented reality, man. This is like the first real kind of ubiquitous expression of augmented reality, right? I mean, Google Glass and all of those various headsets, they are great theoretically and they're great at conventions and a couple people might use them, but this is the first real test for the success of augmented reality. For me, I think that's what's kind of sick about it. I kind of dig it. So I had no clue what it was, right? And then I was in Starbucks doing some reading, and this group of like 14, 15-year-old kids were around me looking at Pokemon Go. So I was like to this little dude, I think his name was JJ, so shout out to JJ in Rancho Santa Margarita. I'm sure there are 1,000 of you. But I was like, okay, dude, so can you explain this to me? What is Pokemon Go? And he showed me, and there was a Pokemon sitting like right in front of me. And so it is this sort of, speaking of sort of like Weberian idea of enchantment, re-enchantment, disenchantment, right?
Exactly where I was going.
It is a sort of re-enchantment of the material world through the projection of like digital forces or digital entities onto the analog world.
Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, as much as we would like to say that we've been completely disenchanted, clearly we haven't. It's where once it was sprites and fairies and then there were angels and demons and et cetera, we still had those enchantments, right? Commodity fetishism is itself an enchantment of the world. Does this not sort of bring back the promise of re-enchanting the world for a social good, for humanitarian reasons or for humanistic reasons, rather than just for the sake of bowing towards capital accumulation?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is where you get a lot of, like, the, I don't know what you even call them, but, like, futurists that are all about technology, like the philosopher Jason Silva, right? I don't know if you ever check him out. I actually really dig the guy. He's got that YouTube channel called Shots of Awe, which is really good. You can check that out. That's another Sticky Leaves for you. That one's free. That one's on the house. But he talks about this all the time, the future of augmented reality or the future of technology to lead to, I guess, heightened states of global, communal, ecstatic flourishing, which might
That'd be great.
Yeah, but I was gonna say that might be a little too much for your cynical perspective, but I dig that shit.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen, dude. All those futurists are like, yeah, technology is gonna save us. Yeah, right after it gets bought out by the capitalists and then used to exploit us and enslave us.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. I read an article a couple of months ago, and it was about the new feudal lords are the Silicon Valley tech companies. And they're talking about how they're going to move away eventually from advertising revenues towards micropayments. And it's the idea that literally you are going to have to pay to survive. You are going to have to pay to live because life is becoming increasingly more dependent upon social media and your activities online. And if you have to buy credits in order just to function, to surf the net or to post things on Facebook, then you are literally paying for life. So there goes the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All that shit's gone.
And as far as Pokemon Go is concerned, right now we had this flattened world, right? Where, is Pokemon Go all over the world or is it just America? I don't even know. I have no idea.
Oh, dude, it's of America. I met these two dudes from Saudi Arabia yesterday, and they were playing fucking Pokemon Go.
All right, so it's a worldwide phenomenon, right?
It's trans-religious.
it's flat right now, right? It's sort of all has relations with all races, class, creeds, boundaries, borders, etc. But that's not going to continue. Guarantee you, it's going to get monetized, right? There's going to be shareholder value logic introduced when it becomes after the IPO, etc., whatever that ends up being. Here's what's going to happen. My prediction. You can judge me.
Okay.
Reddit remind me in 5 years whether or not I was correct about this. It will come to the point where whoever creates Pokemon Go, with Nintendo, right? They sort of make deals with local businesses, mega corporations, etc., to house certain Pokemon in their various business endeavors. So you have to go to this restaurant and pay an entrance fee or whatever it is to have access to the Pokemon who live here or who are here.
Sneaky fucks. That's exactly what they're going to do, isn't it?
Oh yeah, of course it is. And so it's going to get monetized out the wazoo, and they're going to make all this money from local and big businesses. It's going to crowd out anybody who's not able to compete and just further inequality.
You know what you're gonna get? You're gonna get like some fucking spiritual guru guy that's like, yo, if you come in here and you get naked with me and let me massage your back and take you to the deeper levels of ecstasy, I'll introduce you to my secret Pokemon closet. You know that you're just gonna get some douchebaggy dude. You know it's gonna happen. Dudes are just dirty, right? So you're gonna get some douchebaggy dudes that are gonna try to like manipulate women just so they can get them naked, so they can get better Pokemon scores.
Yeah, as with everything, it starts out public, available to anybody, and then it's going to be privatized once the public builds it up for itself, and then the profits will be entirely funneled towards whomever has power in that situation. Guaranteed. 5 years, just wait, it'll happen.
Yeah. Well, but what do you think? So, well, goddammit, your cynicism now has just like destroyed my my thought process, because now I'm all
I feed
deflated.
on it.
I'm all deflated now. So do you see any sort of like positivity about Pokemon Go?
Oh, of course. I mean, as we were talking about before, it's sort of reminding us about the possibility of re-enchantment of the world, and that we do this anyway, but it's usually kind of subversive and it's underneath the surface as far as our conscious thinking. But this is pretty cool as it is. I'm just saying it's not going to last because the power of optimistic, happy 15-year-olds pales in comparison to those who are scheming in back rooms right now about how to privatize the potential profits for these things.
Yep, that about sums it up, doesn't it? See, it's so funny though. I think so many people hear that and they think like, oh, that's just like conspiracy stuff. It's like, no, that's not conspiracy stuff. That's how power works.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also bullshit. I mean, we have no idea what's going on.
That's true.
But same time, bullshit can be real.
I think Childish Gambino says sometimes the stupid shit is the real shit. All right. So,
or that excuses the fact that his music is terrible. Whichever.
Whatever, man. All right, dude. Don't attack my suburban white boy music sensibilities.
No, I love me some Glover, but not the Childish Gambino stuff. Not that stuff.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, that's actually another good segue. I mean, I feel like you scripted this, didn't you? So that we could go into our next segment, which is This Week in Hip Hop. And obviously, I am not an authority on that at all. Troy, you're a little bit of a music buff.
A little bit. My knowledge of hip hop pales in comparison to our
correspondent.
Our correspondent is the word I was looking for.
He's our
hip hop correspondent.
He's our hip hop correspondent. So we'll go out to M. Breezy Michael Burns. I don't think he actually calls himself M. Breezy because that would lose any sort of credibility in anything. But
that's the most OC thing I've ever heard in my life.
But yeah, so we'll go to Michael, who is a hip hop aficionado who's on the streets right now of LA, who's going to hopefully give us some sort of insight into what we should check out in the world of hip hop so that we can expand our horizons.
Women gliding with their wings gone. You bet it's like crazy. You're getting weighed and measured and mixing statements with their spin gone.
What's up, Owls at Dawn? My name is Michael Burns. Nice to meet you. And I'm here with the first edition, hopefully of many editions, of This Week in Hip Hop. And this week, I want to talk to you about a couple of recent projects that I'm excited about and I think you should be listening to. I'm going to tell you about some upcoming projects that will be dropping in the coming weeks and months that I think you should be excited about. And I'm going to tell you what my track of the summer is. You will likely disagree with me, but that is okay. We can work through this. Just stay with me. So, first things first. I want to tell you about two projects, both recent, both by female artists out of Chicago. So the first is the new mixtape from Noname. It's called Telephone. Now, some of you might have heard the name Noname Gypsy before. It's what she was putting music out as. Now she's dropped the Gypsy, just Noname. And you probably heard her on projects by people like Chance the Rapper and Mick Jenkins in the past. And if you haven't listened to Chance the Rapper and Mick Jenkins, I don't know what I can tell you. Just catch up. But this album shows off Noname's incredible lyricism, really unique delivery. It features production from a lot of the best young producers in Chicago right now, and also has some features from Saba and Rari. I do not think you will be disappointed, so check this project out as soon as you get a chance. The next thing I want you to listen to, and I'm cheating here because this did not come out this week, but it came out recently, is a project called Heaven by an artist named Jamila Woods. And this is Heaven, all caps, no E, Heavn, Heaven. Now, Jamila Woods is someone you have also heard before, even if you don't know you have heard her. She was featured on the worst song of the past year, Macklemore's White Privilege Part 2. I don't want to talk about that song right now, but it's terrible. And maybe the only redeeming part of that song is the presence of Jamila Woods. She's also been featured on a lovely song that you probably know, Chance the Rapper's Sunday Candy, where she provides the angelic chorus, but she is an incredibly powerful artist in her own right. This is a project that is soulful, it's lyrical, really politically charged, really powerful in the way it responds to the contemporary moment, and across the board, it has fantastic production, really good features. Again, we have some Chicago guys like Chance the Rapper and Saba on this project. But you should check it out. And a fun fact, if you like Jamila Woods musically, she is also an accomplished poet, so you could read her as well if you're in a quiet room and don't have headphones and you still want your Jamila Woods fix. You can do it. So now let's jump to what my track of the summer is. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Just don't tell me about it. Tell someone else. But my favorite track of the summer is off Schoolboy Q's record that came out in July, called Blank Face, and it's the track from that record called Groovy Tony Eddie Kane, and it features Jadakiss, and I think it's the toughest song I've heard in quite some time. There's been a turn towards poppy, kind of experimental rap music, at least when it comes to mainstream artists recently, and Schoolboy Q kind of says fuck you to all that and just drops a savagely tough, violent, aggressive song. I've been listening to it over and over. I recommend you do the same. If you don't like it, that's okay. I just don't trust you. I just don't. But once again, that's Groovy Tony, Eddie Kane, Schoolboy Q, featuring Jadakiss. Listen to it. Now, to finish, I want to tell you about two projects that were recently announced that we can look forward to. The first is by Pittsburgh's finest, Mr. Mac Miller. He has a new album coming out. It is called The Divine Feminine. So he thinks God is a girl. Wow. And this album has features from Kendrick Lamar, Robert Glasper, and CeeLo. It's exciting. And the first single is called Dang, featuring Anderson .Paak. Anderson .Paak, probably the MVP of music in 2016 so far. So let's look forward to that record. And finally, after years of waiting, after many an online complaint and Twitter rant, Frank Ocean has finally announced his new record, Boys Don't Cry, is coming out this Friday, August 5th. It's going to be released exclusively via Apple Music for the first 2 weeks, and then to the rest of us. But it's finally happening. The summer will not end without new Frank Ocean. So we can look forward to that. So that's it for me. That's our first This Week in Hip Hop. You're going to listen to Noname and her mixtape Telephone. You're going to listen to Heaven by Jamila Woods. You're going to check out Groovy Tony, Eddie Kane by Schoolboy Q, featuring Jadakiss. And you're going to start preparing your mind and soul and body for new albums by Malcolm Miller and Franklin Ocean. Thank you for sticking around. How's it gone? Thank you. Now back to those other two guys. Okay, bye.
All right, thanks for that, Mike. Listening to that new Schoolboy Q record lately. That's legit, man.
Have you heard that track that he's talking about?
Yeah, Groovy Tony.
And do you hate?
Yeah, that's heavy and dark, man.
Do you hate it? Like he said you might. So, or can Michael trust you?
He can trust me.
Okay.
I'm a trustworthy person. I'm digging that record. I didn't necessarily like his earlier stuff, but this record's really good.
I really liked Habits and Contradictions.
Yeah, that was the one I was kind of waffling on.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of dug it.
He's Black Hippie, right?
I don't know, maybe.
The LA Collective with Kendrick Lamar. That's the thing, is that when you get Kendrick Lamar in your crew,
Yeah.
it's kind of like having Michael Jordan on your team. Like just pass the down ball.
So he's the Scottie Pippen or the Steve Kerr or just draining threes from outside.
Yeah, that's the thing, is Scottie Pippen's dope though. He was my favorite, so I don't know, that analogy doesn't walk on all four legs.
This is totally off the wall now, but this just reminded me. I don't even remember who it was, but somebody tweeted that Kane, as the vice presidential nominee for Hillary Clinton, is like the guy on the basketball team that rebounds, plays D, and dives on the floor for loose balls. And I said, so he's like the Dennis Rodman of the Democratic Party? Like, what?
Yeah, not optically for sure.
Not at all.
Yeah, but Dennis Rodman was a superstar. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think he's talking like he's the Luke Longley or the Kurt Rambis.
You got to keep going with white guys, right?
Oh, wait, it's only white guys. Black guys that hustle, you don't call them gritty.
He's the Mark Madsen of the. Was that his name? Mark Madsen.
Bro, Madsen didn't even play.
Mark Madsen. That's right, Mark Madsen.
All he did was dance at the championship celebrations. Nobody has any idea what we're talking about right now.
No, that's okay. Just Google Mark Madsen dancing.
Dance.
And
yeah, championship parade.
And you'll see that's Tim Kaine.
Yeah. Thank us later.
Yeah, that is Tim Kaine, okay? And then do a split shot of Dennis Rodman, and you'll see why he's not Dennis Rodman.
Exactly.
Okay. But yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Michael. I'm gonna check those out. The only. I mean, I know who Schoolboy Q was. I didn't really know who many of the other people were. Oh well, I know Mac Miller. Mac Miller's. Yeah. His Donald Trump song was was legit back in the day. Now I think he actually. I think I saw him say something like "fuck you" to Donald Trump recently. That was kind of nice. But yeah, so the Mac Miller album will be interesting. And then Jamila Woods, I knew of her just because what's it called, the Sunday Candy song?
Yeah, Sunday Candy, the chant song.
Yeah, I dig that song a lot. And she does have a legit voice. It's beautiful. And I remember I kind of figured out who she was just from that, but I'd never heard of her otherwise. So yes, I will definitely expand my horizons this week, delving into.
Yeah, we got homework to do.
Absolutely. Maybe we can talk about it next week.
Yeah, we'll recap this week in hip hop, last week in hip hop.
Sweet, that's right.
All right, everybody. Das Vidania, Amerikanski.